Okay, so sitting in for the chair, I will call to order the February 7th, 2024 meeting of the Elementary School Building Committee. The first item on the agenda is public comment. We usually use this segment of the meeting to offer an opportunity for individuals and citizens to come and comment and make comments. We can't usually get it, we may not speak about it during the meeting, but it may be information for a future agenda item. So seeing nobody here from the public, I will assume that there are no questions. Next item is acceptance of minutes, January 10, 2024. I assume everybody has seen the minutes. And I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain. I'm gonna
One
abstain
abstain, two abstentions. Vendor invoice package.
Chair, Vice Chair, we did not get that together in time because of the timing of the versus the end of the month.
So we'll just table it.
Okay, we'll table this to the next meeting.
Did I get who abstained from that vote? It was Melissa and...
Aye.
Thanks.
Okay, so we'll table the vendor invoice package of, for January 2024 till next meeting. Item number 4 is community outreach. I guess we could talk about update on time and location of the forums. Does anybody have?
You want to advance the slide? Or?
Courtney, can you change the slide?
I think we have the slide up.
Ah, there we go.
Oh, well, I'll update just quickly, and then we'll talk about that. So this is the same timeline we've been showing, and we're on schedule for the submission of the schematic design report. You folks have seen the bulk of that report, which is obviously is the design. What you're going to see tonight is the cost, and so we will be submitting that report on February 29th, which will put us in line for the April MSBA board meeting. I think it is April 21st or 20th. It's somewhere in mid-April. So in order for us to submit, we do need a vote on submitting it. We are talking about scheduling a virtual-only meeting for February 28th, because we're going to talk about the cost tonight. We don't expect you to vote on it tonight, but on the 28th, we will have a virtual-only meeting, which, should be pretty quick, and the plan would be to vote to submit the schematic design submittal. And then, obviously, that leads toward the approval votes that we've been talking about in May at the May town meeting and in early June as of now for a debt exclusion. And then, so to the point of the agenda about community meetings, we have the forum. We've talked about, we had a very successful, as I think you're aware, virtual forums, a series of 2 virtual forums a couple of weeks ago now. And they, I think the total I heard was 150 people, and which is obviously that magnitude's better than we've had at even our best advertised forum. So that really, I think, was a success. That let us, we had talked about having an in-person forum in March, once we've gotten through the submission and the numbers have been out there and we can explain them and we understand the tax impact. We talked about that today at the working group, and the general consensus was that we should have a hybrid meeting for that, so that because of the success of the virtual forums we had, and the plan is to have that hybrid community forum, advertise it well like we have been doing with the banners and with a mailer, and have that in early March. We're looking at that first week in March But I think Dr. Baeta and his team are looking at securing a date that would work. And we are looking at either the town hall or the library for that. And I think somewhat depending on, the town hall may be very busy around this time of year, so that's what's sort of going to drive that. And then we're doing a series of any other forums to groups in general that want to hear from us and events. But we did point out that senior center in particular, we would go to because those, that's a population that may not be able to get out in March so easily to a forum. So that's something that we will be planning on doing sometime in March as well. And that'll sort of trigger a bunch of other forums that we're planning through March and April. Any comments about the forum?
Did folks think the 2 times that we held the last forums worked? Were they good? Do you want to do one next time, or do 2 again? Both seemed well attended.
I think we're doing the in-place one, I assume would be an evening, early evening or evening, but.
We were looking at a 7 o'clock time.
So just the one time?
Yeah, I mean,
For
we
now?
can always do more for now. The, what we learned from the lunch one is it was pretty well attended considering it's lunchtime. It just went too long and people usually only have like a half an hour for lunch. So we learned a couple of things from that to cut things down and, because the evening one actually went quicker. And we had more attendings at that one. So the virtual the virtual seems to work, but at the same time, we also have a lot of people, I think, that probably want to start to attend things. So we'll do it as a hybrid.
Any other questions or comments on the forums?
Well, just to follow up on community, just quickly, the videos, we have a 3D fly-through that DRA has done. I think, are you profiling that tonight, or? are
We have those 360 views.
Clicks that you'll see,
taken
yeah.
from that.
So you'll see sort of how interactive, and that'll be something that'll be available on the website for people to see the project. We also have just looked into and have gotten a proposal from a person who, I don't forget whether I mentioned it here or not, but there's a person who puts out these informational videos. They're really short, 6-minute or 5 to 6 minute videos that are animated, not cartoon animated, but animated with graphics and narrated, sort of professionally narrated. He's actually a former news person, so he has a good broadcasting voice. And we have talked about doing 2 in the immediate future. One, which would basically be almost a district-wide or more a district video around the whole decision around consolidation and how that process happened and the benefits to the other schools and to the town in general and the district in general. And then the second one would be more traditional around the project, the design, the cost, the tax impact, the schedule, and what we are sort of showing a much more, expedited version of what we show at the forum. So those videos we're hoping to get done within the next month. Those would also be, they would be hosted on the website, but they may also be available for people to, we may decide that we want to use them in forums and just sort of do that and essentially have question and answer based on that, depending on how they come out. And we are, mentioned just we're, trying to make sure we get the message out to people through banners and mailers for the community forum and as much whatever we can push the information out so that the public is educated about the project. So that's kind of where we're at with the community piece right now. If anyone had any other comments or points of discussion.
Okay, let's move on. So the next item is the schematic design package update. And the thing everybody's been waiting to hear about, the construction cost estimate and the budget. So I guess I'll turn it over to you guys.
Yeah, so, as you know, we've been spending the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks on getting the cost estimates done and compiled, and so the way that process works in the MSBA, it's also a good process, is DRA does an estimate with their estimator, who in this case was AM Fogarty, and then PM&C is the Vertex estimator, and this is the same process, by the way, that we do, on every project, including the high school. They go off on their own, they estimate the same package, they come back with an estimate, there's usually fairly significant gap between the two, and then we spend a couple of days or more back and forth over reconciling them. So they speak to each other and they discuss why they have a difference in their, very micro, so at a micro level, why they have a difference in aspects of the project. In our case, a lot of the discussion was around site because our site is so complex and there's a lot of judgment that needs to be placed in how you would estimate that. And so we went through that process, and in the end, I don't know whether you can see it there, but the two estimates came in at 92,300,000 and 91,900,000 roughly. So that, we consider that a reconciled estimate. That's very close and within each, an acceptable level of difference. Because AM Fogarty is the architect's estimator, that's the estimator we go with. It's not because it's the low estimate, it's just, that's the estimate. The architect contractually has responsibilities for the estimate, so that's the one we move forward with. As we move forward, we'll be coming back to you about approval on CM at risk, but when we do bring on a CM, a construction manager, like we did at the high school, they will take over one of the role of probably PM&C and work with Fogarty in terms of estimating the project through the 4 or 5 next sets of estimates we'll be going through. So the construction cost came out at $91 million. That, we'll talk a little more about it. That's more than what we had carried at PSR, at the preferred schematic report. I think the next slide may.
I did include this just as
Oh, yes,
so we could
yeah.
mention it.
Yeah, so we are going to include in the Form 3011, the budget form we send to the MSBA, the alternates you see here. Alternate 1 will be in the column in the estimate, in the Form 3011, that is the alternates that are going to be included in the pricing, so that essentially it's being kind of separated more for a pricing purpose if we find other sources of funding, but we will include it in the budget so that one way or the other it would be done. It's obviously not, relatively speaking, a large amount of money, and it's something that we think is a big community benefit, and we've been public about that during our forum. The other 3 around lighting will be included in the Form 3011. They won't be they'll be in the portion of the form where it doesn't get tallied into the bottom line. So what we would expect, we would keep that on the line, and, active, and during the course of construction, if it goes like most of our projects, and I think, and as the high school went, we would probably bring that up to the committee to decide if we see savings in the project, that maybe they would want to do that before the end of the project. So those alternates are the alternates that we've essentially listed in the Form 3011. Anything else, Courtney, on that?
Oh, nope, that was it for that slide.
Okay. So that slide tallies into our total project budget, which we did a version of this at the preferred schematic report. Since it wasn't something that we submitted to the MSBA, it wasn't something that, it was really done more for the purpose of communicating what a cost expectation even at that time. But this one actually does get submitted, so the numbers you see there are pretty consistent with that submission that we did in August, except for the construction cost, and that has increased about roughly $2 million, I think $3 million. Do we have that? Okay, I'm sorry, yeah, good. So going forward just to kind of compare where we are versus the PSR with the construction costs. And it is important to note that the numbers we're showing you today are preliminary. These are what we're submitting to the MSBA. They go through it, they come back to us, they'll have comments, they will likely make some changes that'll impact the numbers. We do, we do the best we can, but obviously we err on the side of trying to assume things will be reimbursable when we submit and let them tell us it's not. So that likely means that some of these numbers will increase, not these numbers, but the town's share portion will increase somewhat. We don't expect that to be a significant amount, but I just want to make sure people are aware these are not the final numbers that will be in the project scope and budget agreement. So back to the construction cost. In the PSR, we did this comparison at the side there. You can see PSR and then schematic design. So the PSR, the budget for the total project budget was $111 million. We are now at $113 million. The square footage, just to the left there, you can see basically didn't change. And that's important for us because the MSBA does not like to see that number change, and I don't think they would consider that a material change. So I think that's going to be fine. But the budget did go up about 2.8 million. This is apples to apples. So at one point, if you remember in the PSR, we were talking about Fano Drive being funded by the town, or the extension of Fano Drive being funded through a town road fund. That actually, in the middle of submitting and in the middle and sitting down with the MSBA at the facility assessment, that actually we learned the town would not be including it in their side of the ledger, so we had to include it in our budget. So that 111 from PSR does include the Fano Drive extension. So it's it's apples to apples in the sense that we're a self-contained project, but obviously we're not doing Fano Drive anymore. So when you look at the construction cost, it went up about $3 million from what we were looking at PSR. The majority of that, there were some reductions in the soft costs, which makes up that sort of small difference there, but the majority of the increase in construction is in the site cost, which is, it has just turned out, and you could see this during the reconciliation, that the site, with the way we are coming in now with bridges that come over the wetlands, there's a fair amount of ledge on that site. It has a funny way that we'll have to manage the earth that gets, the excess earth that's on the site. So with all that said and done, it's become a pretty expensive site to develop. And that actually has caused the cost to go up more so obviously than the building. The good news, however, is that the town share is significantly less than what we were looking at back at PSR. And that's because I think we brought up here in the fall, you were aware, the MSBA made a pretty significant adjustment to their funding formula in terms of reimbursement that reflected at least an attempt by them to help communities that are dealing with the extraordinary construction inflation that occurred over the last 3 years, particularly. That now has leveled. That's moderated, and we're carrying it moving forward at a much more moderate rate, and basically at about 3% a year. But the town share has gone down significantly from what we were looking at. So that really has never been, that's going to help us when we figure out the average tax impact and the preliminary numbers on that, which I don't think we're ready yet to kind of talk about publicly, but once we get them from the town treasurer, I think it'll be considered fairly attractive. So that's kind of the comparison. I would point out to that point I made about construction inflation, I went back and looked at the dollars per square foot of this project to the dollars per square foot that we were paying for the high school, and it's almost doubled. So that's the level of inflation that's occurred in the last, that was from about 7 years ago when we put those numbers in. that construction cost, going back to the Form 3011, well, that's it, pretty much. I mean, then the Form 3011 is the rest of the budget, and as you can see, we've calculated the revised town share. And the graphic on the right is the sort of average family value in Stoughton, the average single-family home value. And so that's what we're using as we base our tax impact calculation, is that number. And I don't know if TJ's on, if he had any comment on that, but he's helping greatly with getting through town hall and figuring out with the treasurer's office what exactly the tax impact will be.
You mentioned
Yeah, because I think he mentioned those numbers are associated only with residential property tax, not including, any commercial or industrial.
Yeah, so, Stoughton has a two-tier tax system that puts more of the burden on the commercial properties, and that's another reason why we expect to see a pretty attractive per-family tax impact. Any comments?
I think it's important to recognize that from the PSR to the actual now cost, it's $10 million, right? That's a big number, and that includes, unfortunately, the increase with the site development, but it's still $10 million to the good, which is not something I usually see, but I'll defer to the experts in the room that.
Well, I think it's, and I think thankfully, that money that was available, some of the incentive, the stimulus monies in the pandemic, kind of came into the state coffers for that purpose, allowed them to help with this. They made that one-time payment to the MSBA fund, which allowed us to change that calculation considerably. But the biggest increase in the reimbursement rate, certainly than we've ever seen by far, and that's a big help. So fortunately, we don't, that's probably not something that'll happen like as an ongoing practice. Money isn't generally flowing into coffers these days. The state now is dealing with a different financial situation, so we're fortunate to kind of have that benefit.
Just wanted to add to that, as I was thinking about this afternoon, that comment right there in itself, the idea that the MSBA, and I've been involved with them going back 15 years, working on different projects as a superintendent, I've never seen in those 15 years the increased gap. It's usually literally a few dollars. And by a few dollars, I'm talking like 6 and 7 and 11, and this was over 170, if I remember correctly.
It was a lot, yes.
So that's an important thing, because as a one-time increase, that type of an increase is probably not happening for a long time, if ever, because the MSBA is a very conservative group with doing that. So that's that, along with the 10 million cost benefit, it is a rational discussion for people to look at when they're looking at this one-time opportunity.
One other point, I think Greg is right, we have not calculated in any rebates, right?
This is just 3011, there's no,
Right.
the utility incentive is outside
All.
of this.
When we're out
Correct.
there in public, we could talk that,
Right.
we're gonna work towards, maximizing those rebates to the good of the town and taxpayers.
Right.
Do you have an order of magnitude kind of number for what those rebates might be?
They're hundreds of thousands?
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we won't be, I won't be surprised that if we can hit like $250,000 on the incentive dollars.
To be honest, they're still working through the incentives that are in the Inflation Reduction Act, which, I mean, we have a limited amount of geothermal, but those are significant. Those, if we can access those, and that's still kind of that process is being worked on, that those would be potentially seven-figure type numbers. But I don't think we could be, I don't think we can be certain enough to comment on that right now. But there'll be a big help, and certainly something we're going to be pursuing.
Any more comments, questions?
Everybody's good with the cost. We wanted to share some of those views, just
Sure.
that are going to be made available on the website. This is literally what the page could look like that is posted on your website, that visitors could click on any of those. Courtney, you could walk us through them.
I just clicked on, so there's several views, interior and exterior, so you can click on any of them. And Joyce will confirm that this is really nicely viewed on a tablet or a phone. You don't have to click when you use it. You basically click on the icon and it takes you to this, and your phone will utilize Gravity and GIS to kind of help
Using your
spin it
phone,
around.
Actually move as if you're in the space looking around, and the picture moves with it.
So,
Kids will pick up
you
on it
can-
right away because it's like a video game.
yep. So this is like as if you were on the deck outside the STEM room looking around. And then there's like various interior spaces that we showed, and the whole fly through on the video is available on the website, Jeff, right? It's something that people can go see at any time. And then this could actually be put on the website as well. This one takes a little longer. It's a little bit bigger of a file. It'll probably work faster on your phone than it does on my computer.
Courtney, can you confirm what kind of software you need to support this?
This is just a PDF, so when you use your phone, you should be able to, especially if it's an iPhone, it shouldn't be an issue. And Joyce, I think you tested on the iPad, correct?
I tested it on the iPad and the iPhone, and I can't recall, it did ask me one thing when I went into both devices as a one-time, allow, and for the life of me, it escapes me now, and I can't replicate it, but there was one tab to click on, but nothing to install.
Right.
Let's see, that one just took a little while to load. I think this is just my computer slowing down a little bit, but you can pan around and look at any of these. Up, down. You can check out all the kids. You can't zoom, but you can move around. So I think that's pretty key. But it's a fun interactive tool, and yeah, if you have your phone or your iPhone, it's definitely more fun than using your desktop or your iPad.
You don't have to strap on those goggles.
And the level of detail, honestly, at
Courtney,
schematic
this
is
is
amazing.
Diane. Is there any way that we can put sound with this? Like someone walking through the building?
We haven't tried putting sound with this specific tool, but we do have sound on the video itself. So it's kind of it's a different function. It's a different type of tool that we use. So I can ask the question, but I think this is really designed for viewing in 3 dimensions, as if you were using VR goggles, or this way if you're doing just like a tablet view or a phone view.
Okay, thank you.
I'll double check, but I think this may be limited. I think that's it in terms of graphics that we had. So this PDF was actually included in what we sent out today. So you have this already. You should be able to click on any of these in that file and test it out. And please do send me an email if you have any trouble.
Okay, thanks. I think that's what we had, Joe.
Okay, very good. The final agenda item is new business. This is where we consider new issues for future meetings or discuss new business. Does anybody have any comments for this agenda item?
Joe, I just have one.
Sure.
This interactive will be in the newsletter this week, which goes out to all the families and town meeting members and anyone that wants to go to our site as well. So it's just an opportunity for people to see it from a different place.
I didn't mention one other thing before, just before we leave. We are going to school committee next Tuesday to do the presentation, and more, that'll be a more fuller presentation with design in it than what you saw tonight.
TJ was trying to run something with the town meeting too, right?
The select board? Yeah, I think that's the week after. But yes, yeah, we're trying to now, TJ is looking at what other public boards we should be going in front of, like the select board, particularly at least initially.
Could I just ask a question? Tim, when you had mentioned 3% cost inflation factor going forward, is that essentially all the inputs, the labor inputs and everything? So if I took the whole project and just calculated 3% of the entire 66, 3% on that would be
No,
rough?
no, it's built in the number.
No, but I mean, if this was delayed,
Oh, if it was-
say if
yeah.
you went per year out, is it 3% on that entire 66 million and change?
It's 3% on the 91 million.
On the 91?
Yeah.
Okay,
that's-
but that would, the
And then the town share of that
ratio,
is-
town versus
would be that.
state would be roughly the same, probably,
Yes.
ratio. So if I took the town's portion
Yeah,
times 3% a year,
yeah, that's about right. yeah.
that would be about, is that
Yeah.
correct? So
Yeah.
it calculates like a 5-year delay would come out, wiping out the 10 million, because I just did it on my Excel. So
Yeah,
a
I'm
5-year
sure it
delay
would,
would
yeah.
wipe out this 10 million savings
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah.
on the math. I just
I'm
wanted to
sure.
check if what I was
No,
looking at was correct.
that's about right.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you. Thank you so much.
I know you mentioned that the select board meeting, also just information for future meetings on when maybe the planning board meeting will be and the conservation committee as well, just because I think the public may want to weigh in at different
Well, I mean,
junctures.
the planning, we would be seeing them very heavily starting in the fall, because that's when will have actual information to put in front of them.
Yeah, we've met informally.
We
with
have
the-
met, yeah.
With, not the planning board, but the town planner and the conservation agent. But to make application and actually meet with the boards formally, we have to be in design development. So that would happen after the vote. In June, we'd need a couple months to get the plans up to speed with enough detail to meet with them. So we're talking about September, October, or something like that.
Okay, I didn't know if one came before the other because of the way we're routing.
They actually happen somewhat simultaneously. Once we have the drawings at that level, we'll probably be before the planning board simultaneously with the Conservation Commission.
Okay, great. So fall.
We'll probably have more around permitting to talk with you about. It's a pretty complex permitting project right now.
Okay, anything else? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed. Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you, folks.